So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the latest webinar as part of our Sustainable Business Series. I'm Raj Kandola. I'd like to welcome you all to today's session. Now, as you know, the Sustainable Business Series was established last year to help those businesses that are keen to embark on their own net zero journey and offer tips and guidance along the way. This year's series consists of a series of webinars, blog posts, and podcasts across a range of sustainability topics and culminates with an in-person conference taking place on the 2nd of November. Now, thanks to our sponsors, Aston University, University of Birmingham and Shakespeare Martineau, all of these events are free to attend. Now, this morning, we are talking about the development of low carbon products and services and the business opportunities which can emerge from this. And I'm delighted to say that we're joined by three keynote speakers today. First, we're going to hear from Jack Kelly from Midland Heart, the Director of Talent and Corporate Affairs at the organisation, talking about Project 80. Then we'll hear from Maria Campo from Aston University, working at EBRI, the Energy and Bioproducts Research Institute, providing us with case studies around the benefits of developing greener products and services. And then we'll hear from Dane Kierstenson from Run Your Fleet. Dane is an account manager at the organisation, and we're speaking about the organisation's electric fleet and the benefits that has brought around. So in terms of an agenda for today's event, we'll hear from each of our speakers, and then that will leave around 20 minutes for Q&A. Again, feel free to post your questions throughout the presentations and I'll put them to our speakers. Just so you know, for the Q&A session, we will be joined by Maria's colleague, Chris Summers, who's an associate at EBRI as well, who will then obviously participate in the Q&A session. And we will aim to finish at 10 a.m. So without any further delay, I'll now hand over to Jack. Jack, over to you.
Thank you. Cheers. What I'm going to sort of talk about today, and I'll share some slides with you now, is Project 80. So when it comes to sort of, ensuring our homes and our operations are, as energy efficient and as low carbon as they can be, there's several bits from a Midland Heart point of view that we will, that we're looking to sort of focus on. The other part of this, and it would be another presentation sort of in its own right, is our retrofit program. So obviously, as a 100-year-old landlord in the city, we have several thousand, over 10,000 properties that are effectively pre-war terraces. So obviously, if you then look at that as a sort of a project for how we would make sure that we get those homes to the standard the government, the council, the combined authority want us to get them to, that in and of itself is another project. And if anybody is interested in that, please get in touch with me and we can provide some more information. But what I'm going to focus on today is just the provision and building of new homes. So we're really sort of proud to be able to proudly say we're the first people to have built to this level of sort of green, sort of low carbon homes in the country. So we built the first homes to the Future Home Standards, and they were built for affordable rent, and the families who now live in those homes, the first ones are on Grosvenor Road in Handsworth. We're on Birmingham City Council's waiting list, so we've proved not only that the standard can be built to, it can be built to for affordable rent, and will work for families, being as obviously, as you will see throughout the presentation, there is some change to how we will operate these homes. So the aim is that the average home produces 80% less carbon emissions than one built to the current energy efficiency requirements. So what we did at Project 80, and I won't go into too much of the tech, but we've built 12 new homes and we've used different technologies, and you'll see some bits of that as we go through, so we can understand exactly how these are working. Low carbon forms of heating, and again, this is something that, as you'll see throughout the presentation, will mean people need to live in the homes differently to how we live in our homes currently, and this sort of tough fabric. So notional sort of improvement of 28% in performance. So overview, building types, we wanted to build these using traditional methods. So there's no need to reskill a workforce. There was no need to do anything too sort of radically different. We wanted family homes because that's primarily what we build. We wanted to build them in Birmingham. It's our core sort of operating area, using traditional methods, local architects, local construction firms, local labour, but obviously with the sort of low carbon technologies built into it. So effectively, as you can see, and there they are now, they are traditional family homes, majoritively 2-bedroom. You can see obviously vast majority have solar panels. There's a host of other sorts of technologies within those built, and I'll show some bits of that in a moment. But that is on Grosvenor Road in Handsworth. There was 2 properties towards the home towards the top of the photo that looks new. There's some properties there and then land behind them. We've removed 2 older, low sort of efficiency homes, and as you can see, there are now 12 new properties there. The second stage of this is going to be in Edgbaston, and they are masonettes. So again, slightly different type of property, different area, and a sort of different need there for our customers. The first of those will be handed over to customers tomorrow, I believe, actually, yes, Friday. So we are handing the keys over to these tomorrow, and then another, well, we will look for more sites to do this sort of Project 80 design too. One of the key parts of this, and one of the bits we sort of really want to share, and I'm not going to go into the Emporia sort of technology on the side, but one of the key elements of this from us as a sort of housing provider is these properties will need people to move in and use them very differently. We've done a host of welcome events, training. There's an e-learning sort of package for our customers where our customers can refresh what was told to them on the day as they moved in, and they have a sort of portal for for information. What we're doing alongside colleagues at BCU is monitoring how the houses are being used. So again, being the first people to build to this standard in the UK, and the first housing association to let these out, we are monitoring how they're used. So we can then go back to government and say the future home standard for 2025 can be delivered. These are some of the issues we've found with it. Here's some of the bits we believe work very, very well. But here's how we're going to have to, when we are doing this en masse, think about how we communicate these new technologies to families who will be, living in very different properties. For example, not opening your windows during the summer and not having to turn the heating on in the winter. But as you can see, what we are able to find here, and this is anonymized, so it's not like a Big Brother sort of we're monitoring exactly how each family uses their home, but across the patch, how are things working? So the heat pump and obviously the PV, how are they working? But equally, is the water heating, where we would want it to be? Obviously, lights look relatively energy efficient. Sockets are slightly higher than we thought. Is this because people are using heaters or whatever it would be that would be counterintuitive to how we want to use the home? So we're able to sort of monitor that through the technology. And again, you can just see here, and what we're able to do then is go and speak to, send information to people. I'm not going to go into exactly what this shows, but the green line effectively, as you can see, at around 8 o'clock one morning, one of the heat pumps was switched off, which obviously you're not supposed to do, and then getting it back to where it needed to be caused a huge sort of energy surge. So again, we were able to send information out to customers and just say, please keep these technologies on and make sure that you're using them as we had asked you to use them. So what sort of next? Well, as I say, we're going to review the sort of site waste as well. So again, obviously building to this spec for the first time was new to us. So again, what lessons can we use to make this more efficient going forward? We're going to look at the embodied carbon and do an insight again with colleagues from BCU and the cost comparison analysis. So obviously it costs us slightly more, between 10 to 15% to build to this spec than it does to the current spec, but equally there's a huge saving for our customers. We believe through the early sort of part of our studies on this that some of our customers will be paying in and around £100 a year energy costs, which when obviously you think that is well below now what half of most people, the average sort of cap that's sort of artificially in place really in terms of people's pockets with the government's sort of aid. It's obviously a staggering saving, but we do obviously need to make sure that the energy use and sort of cost is where it should be. People are using them as they should. And obviously the indoor air quality, these are incredibly airtight sort of units. And we just need to make sure that that's where we want it to be. That is being monitored. There's no there's nothing that seems of concern currently, but we're monitoring that. And obviously overheating and temperature in these new homes as we see spikes in heat. Again, nothing that is causing us any concern or hasn't over the summer. You wouldn't expect it probably now, but over the summer, and these were inhabited through June, July, August. Aren't seeing anything on this, but it was one of the things that people in and around this spec wanted information on, so that's where we are. In terms of collaboration, that is, I hope, every partner in the project, but as you can see, we proudly wanted to use, where we could, local firms, partner with a local university, you know, even to H&H in the middle. Not necessarily, I think they've got bases over in the East Midlands, but they reclaim ash from power stations, form it into bricks. So even the bricks that we used in the building of these are relatively technologically advanced, but also sort of as closely sourced as they can be to where we are, but again, allowing to see building on scale how these are used. So it has been a fantastic sort of project with partners from across the region, but undoubtedly something that puts Birmingham at the centre of this. And the reason I say that is these are a number of people who've carried profiles on this, and actually it is something that Birmingham can sort of quite proudly say, a number of businesses, small and large, across the region can say they've sort of been part of to get off the ground. And again, that just sort of shows the number of people who've asked to come and see the site. So the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, we had, I think that's them actually on that photo, yes it is, a host of sort of civil servants from that department came up to see exactly what was being done. Andy Street's been several times, would serve some of our peers, but also Barrett, Bellway, Redrow, Taylor Wimpey, some of the bigger sort of builders in the sector have been to Handsworth to see, you know, the first of these homes built to this sort of spec and some of the technology we're using, but also the sort of research we're doing, because ultimately come 2025 they're going to have to build this spec. So we're well ahead of time and the sort of curve on this. But I think the bit really sell is, and we, you know, there is more to do on this. We've said we would ideally like to do around 80 homes to this standard, and we're currently probably 25% of the way through that. So there's much more to come, and we want to find new places to be able to sort of build to this spec. It really does sort of put us on the map in terms of a city, in terms, you know, all of these people from around the country coming to see what could be done in inner city Birmingham. And that's that. So if there's, I don't know if we're doing questions now or am I to hold fire?
Jack, thank you for that. Yeah, I think what we'll do is look to do questions after each of the presentations. So I'll give the audience members a bit of time to think about what they might want to ask. But no, thank you for that. It's fascinating. And it's really great to see that element of collaboration from across local partners in delivering such an important project. So thank you for that. Could I now bring in Maria, please?
There. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear and we can see that. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's always a pleasure. And thank you for having us today. Hi, everyone. Before I start, I would like to give some of the brief to the points that I would like to cover today. Today, I wanted to talk about the challenges and opportunities faced by businesses. Why should companies go green? What is there to gain? And give you some examples of strategies. See? Okay, so around this time last year, the UK adopted the net zero strategy, which, as you know, aims to decarbonize all economy sectors by 2050. So naturally, there is a great demand for greener products and services. Companies and customers are expecting businesses to prove that they are acting sustainably and that they are taking low carbon seriously. Some more businesses are now revising and improving their energy efficiency and their supply chain, which reduces cost in the long term and generates value. This also places them in a better position to face the stronger regulations that are coming up and will allow to attract and secure investors and business partnerships. This even can help with recruitment, as people are now more keen to work for companies that have credentials that are more sustainable. So SMEs are a great advantage here, and they are fairly flexible and rebound quicker than larger companies. SMEs come with less internal policies, and there are several funds and support that are intended and designed to help them to ease their transition and allowing them to explore different angles. However, now, as you may know, SMEs are facing a lot of challenges around the cost of energy and issues with suppliers and waste disposal. At EBRI, we know that these opportunities can be turned into, these challenges can be turned into opportunities. So, for example, by closing the loop and converting waste from biomass into a new feedstock to obtain energies and valuable products. But I'm sure they didn't come today to receive a class on thermochemical conversion and sustainability, life cycle assessment, and carbon accounting. For this, we offer master classes periodically. No, you may be more interested in hearing about what other businesses are doing towards achieving their goals and to solve their particular challenges. So at EBRI, we develop and provide practical solutions for companies and local authorities. So instead, I brought you today some of the recent examples of these SMEs that we are helping and supporting under the ERDF, which are the strategies that they are applying. So there's always a good place to start is to revise an existing product and do a market research and analyze the supply chain and assess the suitability of the available technologies. We did this with Velorim, a company that has created a scheme to recycle used tires. When they approached us, they were unsure of what would be the best strategy to take to recycle these tires. So they were thinking of possibly to do incineration and collaborate with the cement industry. But after they came to us, they changed the direction and they started to consider pyrolysis instead to obtain valuable chemicals. And now they have built a great network and they are starting to collect these tires. Another company that came to us was a very well-established company that created charcoal for barbecues. They, in this case, wanted to see if they could increase the value of their supply chain by using some of the fines that they produce through the process. We took those fines, the fine material, the dust, and we analyzed it for compliance. And the test came back saying that it would be a perfect product sold as biochar for soil amendment under 3 different standards. We also later on helped them to use this fine material to produce briquettes. So we gave some suggestion of the equipment that they could get to do this and some formulations. So after that, they created the briquettes, and this helped them to diversify further their products. So this is a good example of how something that can be considered an inconvenience and a waste can be turned into a product and generate more value. Now you can find both of these products on the website. Another company that came to us, they are creating this, as you can see in the third picture, the blinds for the vehicles. And they also found in pyrolysis a way of reducing 50%, a potential way of reducing 50% of the waste to landfill. And they also allow students to enter and gain some research experience. So remember, for sustainability, sustainability has 3 pillars. There is the environment, the economic, but also aspects. So by providing support to SMEs, they get reassurance, and this opens the possibility of forming new collaborations and the creation of new jobs. This is also the example for Record in the Black Country. This company collects works and from different sectors, and they have made connections over the whole West Midlands, and resells these corks for them to be used. In some cases, the companies that come, they are facing several challenges all at once. This is the case of the Clon Brewery. This local producer generates 1 ton of waste per week. So imagine, instead of disposing it, the spelt could be used for composting and to produce even food supplements rich in vitamin B, or even used to generate biogas if done through anaerobic digestion. So we explored all of this, and we provided some suggestions on how could they approach this. In the case of the Clan Brewery, they also generated a huge amount of wastewater, and they consume a great amount of water. So this could be solved very easily just by closing the cooling system. This was also one of the suggestions and the strategies that they had. And they had as well the opportunity of installing the solar panels, just as you just mentioned before. So now you can find their beers all around the West Midlands, featured as guest beers in the pubs. In the case that you next time, maybe on Friday, go to one of the pubs, search for the Clan Brewery. This is one of the local producers. Well, and sometimes companies are already well established and they very well ahead, like Certainly Wood. So this is a company that distributes wood logs and dries for firewood, and they produce also solar energy. So in this case, they just require a supply chain analysis to understand where they were at and what they have achieved so far. And they also wanted some guidance on which were the available funding opportunities for them. After we conducted a carbon assessment, we estimated that Certainly Wood was actually displacing 8 times the amount of emissions that they were producing. And this led to them to obtain a funding to expand furthermore the woodland area. So all in all, as you can see, these strategies help to differentiate the company, their products and services, giving them a competitive advantage. In a world monitored by the media where visibility is key, if control fails, chances are it will be exposed. Everybody here remembers the catastrophic event at Bangladesh in the Rana Plaza, right? This was a pivotal point, raise awareness and increase the demand for supply chain transparency, especially for global supply chains. Or even more recently with the scandal involving drugs, which was featured in the BBC Panorama documentary, for apparently exploiting primary forests to obtain energy that was labeled as renewable. So yeah, remember, it's very easy to lose track. If you can't see it, you cannot measure it or monitor it, which is critical for sustainable outcomes. Some of the challenges are quite common, even across different sectors, and it might be easier than you think to solve. The first step is just to start revising. So yeah, thank you for your attention. I believe these slides will be handed later. I have left here our contact details in case you'd like to talk to us, and also a link to our website where we have more content on this note. Underneath each one of the cases, there is a link as well to a document that summarizes the report that we provided to them, in case you want to know a bit more about each one of the companies that I mentioned today and what other strategies they have, because I really summarize it here. And yeah, if you have any questions, please, my colleague Chris Thomas is here to support them as well. He is doing a great job with carbon accounting, and he knows an awful lot about funding opportunities. So do ask if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. That was fantastic. Really interesting to see the range and diversity of businesses that are working with yourselves, and like you said, the competitive advantage that can be gained from an economic perspective, but also thinking about the importance of activity within the supply chain, like you said, and being aware of some of the perils and challenges there as well. So thank you for that. As I said, you can see the details there. Obviously, please do get in touch with Maria and Chris if you have any further questions or would like to have an offline discussion. But again, we'll have time for Q&A after Dane's presentation. And on that note, I'd like to bring in Dane from Run Your Fleet.
Hello, good morning. So let me get my screen ready for you. Can we all see?
Yeah, that's great, Dane.
So as it says there, I mean, my name's Dane. I'm an account manager at Run Your Fleet, and what I want to quickly run through with you today is really who we are, you know, what we do, and how we as a business are trying to be more sustainable, and how that positions us to help other companies do the same. So some just key highlights here. You know, we recently hit a threshold that we manage over 30,000 vehicles on our portal on our subscription basis. The number was 30,493 as of yesterday, to be precise. Just over 1,000 of those are fully electric, but 16% of the vehicles that we ourselves fund and that are then, you know, contract hired or leased out to our customers, 16% of those are fully electric, with another large number of hybrid vehicles as well. We do have a unique platform which manages all of our services, and with 37 million cars and vans on the road, there's a lot of room for growth there in terms of making that overall number a higher percentage of electric and hybrid vehicles. So we were founded in 2011 with some investment from the Ford Group, and as I've touched on, you know, a threshold of a number of vehicles that we manage. But really what I've highlighted there, and what I think is most relevant to today, is the embracing that shift to electric vehicles. So that's what I'm going to focus on, about how what we're doing that today. Our platform, as I mentioned, has all of the services fed into it. It is bespoke, it is built by us, so it can be tailored to customers' requirements so that they can manage all aspects of those services and their fleets in that one place. But I've got a little video, so I'll let the video sort of tell you about us rather than me talking at you. So Easy. Hope you didn't mind me bopping along to our own theme music there, but I mean, as we're touching, I know the two speakers before me have spoken about how they're helping companies to produce kind of more sustainable products or more sustainable buildings. Well, obviously we don't produce any products ourselves, but we do work with a number of electric vehicle manufacturers who do. So I'm sure you should recognize some of the names on the screen there who are really pioneering the way into electric vehicles. Tesla, obviously, you know, becoming a real household name and perhaps the front runner. But Kia as well won Car of the Year 2022 with the car, the EV6. So I guess the question is posed, why go electric? You know, over the last couple of years, we've really seen an increase in inquiries from businesses about why they should go electric, why they want to move into an electric powered fleet. And obviously with the government bringing in bans on the sale of ICE in combustion engines by 2030, and the ban on the sale of hybrid vehicles, new manufactured vehicles by 2035, you know, our MD said, look, why don't we make our entire company fleet electric? And I think that puts us in a good position, because what it essentially does is it means we've lived it. We've lived through the experience. We know what it's like. We know what it's like to have range anxiety. We know what it's like to have a charging point. We know what it's like to get used to the one pedal drive. So, you know, if you've heard any conversations about electric vehicles, then you've probably heard those phrases: range anxiety, all carbon neutral, it's got zero emissions. I'm sure I've heard there's tax benefits. So I thought if we just do a little myth busting on some of these things, and hopefully that will help. So, you know, don't they take ages to charge? Well, if you ask my kids, then yes, I'm sure they'd say that it does take ages to charge. But, you know, really it comes down to the speed and power of the charging point, you know, the size of the battery in the vehicle itself on the specifications. You know, superchargers are starting to come in now, which could see batteries charged within an hour. You know, obviously the costs and demand of those as there's more vehicles on the road has become a factor. But generally, you know, for your general commute, the vehicle should be fine. And if you need to plan your journeys, and I'd recommend, you know, charging up overnight at home is going to be the best way. Another question that comes up is, well, aren't they more expensive? Well, you know, not necessarily, no. Perhaps the initial outlay could be more when compared to combustion engines. But if you can see in this generic kind of analysis here, which is based on an ownership model over 3 years, the tax benefits are there. They're zero, you know, for your road tax and road fund license. The cost of electric to fuel the vehicle is cheaper than petrol or diesel. The overall purchase price is marginal, and the servicing costs are significantly reduced because there's less moving parts, there's less mechanical elements to it. So do electric cars have gears? The quick answer is no, they don't. So if you're familiar with driving an automatic car, the transition to electric shouldn't be too painful for you. And for anyone who's been in an electric vehicle, you know, you will note the impressive acceleration. These are not milk floats, those times are sort of left in the past now. And then I guess let's move on to what are the benefits of driving that electric vehicle. Well, of course, why we're having this webinar today is, you know, you're helping the environment by significantly reducing your CO2 contributions. There are zero emissions coming out of electric vehicles. And I think that was made particularly evident to me personally with the summer that we had, and you're sitting in a traffic jam, you've got the windows wide open, and then you just get a big nostril full of, you know, exhaust fumes or whatever it is. So, you know, if we've got electric vehicles all over the road, you know, we're significantly reducing that pollution. Electric cars are quieter, so again, reducing noise pollution. So if you live anywhere in a busy area, you know, those electric vehicles are much quieter. And as I've already touched on, there's a reduction in running costs, and they're cheaper to service because of the fewer moving parts, and electricity is going to be cheaper than fuel. And then, as I say, you can enter the ultra low emission zones, and there are tax benefits associated with owning an electric vehicle. So what will the Run Your Fleet electric vehicles look like, and how have we prepared for that? So, I mean, our boss, our MD, has had, a Jaguar I-Pace for a number of years now. He's been fully electric for a while. Our finance director has a fully electric BMW, but our fleet for the sales and operations team is going to be a mix of car of the year, Kia EV6s, and some Polestar 2s. So every member of staff, as I mentioned, is going to have those charging points installed at home. So for us, I feel like that really provokes conversation. Your neighbours are going to see those being installed. It provokes questions from them. They see that more and more people are sort of embracing that change to a sustainable and greener future. So we feel that that really opens the door because we've lived it, as I've touched on already. We do work closely with Drive Tech, who are part of the AA. They provide all of our e-learning modules and platforms, and they've created some videos which are about EV familiarization. So if you've never driven an electric vehicle, they have the one pedal drive, which seems very strange in the first instance to get used to, but as you ease off the accelerator, that regenerative braking charges the battery. So you can't drive electric vehicles the way that you would drive your normal combustion engine. So it's just the simple things like that that are touched on in this video that is really going to help. And so all of our staff are getting involved in that. We'll all be enrolled in that to make sure that we know what we're doing. And therefore, we're in a great position to advise others with that. And, electric cars are becoming increasingly more affordable. We're seeing more and more of them on the road. 1 in 4 vehicles that are now on the road are electric. So the question is becoming more and more, why not an electric vehicle? So I hope that's given us a brief overview. I hope I'm not over time. Raj said I would be beaten severely if I ran over time. So if you have any questions, please do it in Q&A, or alternatively, my details are there, or Raj can give you my contact information, and hopefully I can address any queries that you might have.
Thanks, Dane. I think there must have been a mix-up in translation there, but yeah, no beating coming forthwith. No, that's fantastic. Really was really interesting. And again, I think we'll get on to some really interesting discussions around the future of EVs and what that means for broader climate change goals in this country and in our region as well. So as I said, we've got about 15 minutes or so left for Q&A. So before we go to the audience, I thought I'd come to each of you first with just a couple of questions that I had, just based on the feedback from your presentation. So Jack, if I start with yourself, I mean, really, it sounds fascinating and really innovative what you're doing with Project 80, but what learning and knowledge do you hope the project will bring to the broader sector? I know there's a lot of uncertainty right now with what's happening in government, and there's a question related to that as well. But yeah, I'd be keen to get your thoughts on that first and foremost.
Yeah, thanks. So I suppose ultimately, in terms of the construction, those lessons are there. So, of course, there is certain challenges in terms of procuring, more technology for a home, building that technology into the home. As people will be familiar with, a need for different kinds of areas within a home. So, for example, if you have an air source heat pump, there'll be a need for certain space for that to go both outside, but then for water cylinders, etc., to be inside. So there's certain challenges like that, of course, we could share with the sector. That probably isn't going to be, as I say, revolutionary to the sector, because I think most people will be, or most builders will be in and around that. I think building to a bigger scale and build into this spec for the first time in the UK, I think there will obviously be some questions about cost when people think the market will catch up to certain things. Obviously, us using a traditional method of building rather than modular will also be something that people will want to sort of find out more about. As I say, I think where the real value for this, for government probably more than the sector, and obviously it's a different thing for somebody who's building a home to sell and then somebody who's building a home. We're 100 years old and hope to be 200 years old, who will have this technology for decades. Is what I think will be interesting to our sector rather than potentially other home builders, and to the government, is how this technology is used. So to my point about that spike when a heat pump gets turned off, or people opening their windows in the summer, because it's counterintuitive. I mean, Dane said, we had a hot summer, your windows are down, that's what you do, isn't it? So if you suddenly had a car where your windows didn't come down because the car was going to regulate itself, on the first day it hit 30 degrees, it would feel an odd thing. And that is obviously what we're seeing with these homes. So I think that's where the real value will be. As I say, we've sort of said, obviously we didn't build to one spec, but that sort of, there is a premium on building to this. And to the question in the Q&A, I suppose in terms of government policy, there's a consultation out, but we think it's right that rent should be capped this year. Normally they go up in line with inflation and a little bit more. It's +1. Obviously that can't happen this year. We would not be advocating for that, but there will be a rent cap, and we don't know exactly where that's going to land yet. But obviously a differential between inflation and the rent you can charge makes we will continue to build. We at least in the in the shorter term, obviously it won't change anything we've got planned for the next year, 2 years. But that will make it harder for some of our peers to do this, frankly. We've committed and we're into it, and we'll continue to do what we've said we will do. But if you were looking at it afresh today, it may not be a project some of our peers would embark on. So we'll see where that ends up.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Jack. I'd like to bring in Maria and Chris if possible. So Maria, in your presentation, I think obviously Jack's just touched on the challenging economic circumstances that we're currently facing right now, and particularly from an SME point of view. When we first started the Sustainable Business Series last year, we talked about some of the barriers that organisations faced in terms of embarking on this net zero journey, and they talked about a lack of capacity, a lack of knowledge about where to start, about how to go about these things, but also a lack of money. Obviously, we're coming out of the pandemic. Many had huge debts and overheads, which have subsequently been exacerbated with the inflation crisis and the broader cost of living crisis as well. So I know you talked about, as a first point of call, SMEs need to kind of look at the market and do some research, but how would you advise businesses to make that initial step, and what would be the best thing to do moving forward?
Yeah, that's a tricky question to answer, because each company, businesses, they have their own needs. But yeah, the first bit is, as we said and you just mentioned, is just start to revise. Often this can be the trickiest part, because there is so much that can be done with one company, and as you said, the lack of knowledge is the main issue. So yeah, sometimes small businesses, like family business, they come and they are completely lost. Like, they have so many issues at the same time, and they just don't know which one to take first. So it's just a moment of take a step back, take some perspective, see what other people are doing, because that's always very useful. And that's why our support is so important, because we have created already a good network of people and we support different ones. So basically, searching for help, not being scared or afraid of actually saying, hey, I have a problem, and come to different workshops and join other clusters, and then actually see what can be done. And sometimes this can lead to different collaborations, and what can be a problem for one is just can be connected with others and find a common ground and find solutions and profit together. So it's always a matter of stepping forward first and start to open the mind and see what other things can be done. So it's a very general answer what I'm giving you, but it's really very tricky. Depends on the company. Yeah, so knowledge first, of course, and always try to find help. There is no need to just stay there and do everything on your own. No need at all. And there's plenty of support. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it's up to organisations like the Chamber to help inform businesses of those opportunities out there and connect them to the organisations do that type of work. And thank you for that. Did you want to come back in? Sorry,
no, just to give you an example. Here, Jack and Dane, they are both doing great strategies for reducing the carbon emissions in both the buildings and vehicles. This is one of the strategies that we always suggest to the companies. At the end, they have a building, they are somewhere, or maybe at home, so they can use these strategies. And you can here build 3 connections with them. So it's just an example of how easy it is just to start moving forward just by actually starting.
No,
That
makes
was it.
sense. Thank you for that. Dane, obviously you touched upon some of the kind of the myths and some of the kind of concerns, the frequent concerns that come up in conversations around electric vehicles. And one question that we sometimes hear, and again, it's kind of tied into the broader discussions around energy devolution, energy storage, but is, will the grid have the capacity in a few years when, you know, the majority of organizations and people are switching to electric vehicles to facilitate that change? I mean, is that something that you kind of hear from organizations that you speak to as well?
Do you know what, it hasn't been, to be honest. I think that you know, one of the questions in the Q&A is also about future proofing, and I think at the moment really the question is, look, you know, can we kind of afford not to, with all of the things that the discussions that are coming up in the day-to-day speak about our carbon footprint, about CO2 emissions, about air quality. You know, really, as Maria said, we need to be doing something. So in order to make that transition sooner rather than later, things you would hope, well, you'll only see an improvement in those emissions, in that air quality, and all of those things. As the infrastructure improves, as charging points become more efficient, I'll probably go into answering the question in the Q&A in this answer. Then of course, technology, by the time you've created it, someone's finding a way to improve it. So when something is released for general consumption, there's probably already a better, newer, more efficient model in production. That doesn't mean that I mean, to answer this question directly, that the technology for electric charging points is going to be outdated immediately. No, it will still do the job. It's still going to charge the vehicle in a way that is going to get you from A to B and charge that car. Is it going to be outdated? Well, I guess almost anything is outdated as soon as it's created. Someone's got a better version in mind. You could always make improvements, but no, you know, this is a future-proofing plan. You know, will there be superchargers? Yes. Will the technology kind of change as wiring and cabling needs to be updated? Yes. You know, but the infrastructure, the fundamentals of what we need in order to maintain an electric fleet nationwide, worldwide, is still going to be there, and we still require maintenance and kind of tweaking and updates here and there, as with any technology, software or otherwise. So, you know, I don't see it being an issue. It isn't a question that I've had, Raj, but I can understand why people are concerned. But I really think that the benefits far outweigh the risk, if you know what I mean. So I don't see that as a hindrance, really.
Okay, that sounds good. So we've had a couple of questions from the audience. Jack, this is one for yourself. So we've had Mark Verberger Postel saying, is there a concern for Project 80 with the new government strategies? As we know, it's fair to say there's a lot of uncertainty at the top of government right now, a lot of change. But yeah, do you want to come back on that one?
Yeah, so as I say, I think there's obviously the financial constraint for our sector that could come with a cap on rents. That said, you know, I'm sure, you know, most organisations will still be able to continue with some form of output in terms of new build over the next few years, but may not be necessarily, as I say, to this spec. I think the interesting thing will be whether this moves back from 2025. If there is, I mean, we're not hearing that currently, but that would probably be the most likely move if there was a upgrading of government interest in quantity or sort of numbers of build rather than spec of build. You could push that back and obviously increase output in terms of physical numbers post, you know, following that kind of decision. We're not hearing anything of that, and we're still planning for a sort of 2025 start point for this. But if you actually look, there's less than 100 homes at this standard currently in the UK. As I say, we were the first to do it, and we're proud to do that. But we've got whatever it will be, 2025 of those in Birmingham. So within 3 years, for this to be the new standard of home is a big shift from where we are. So I suppose that the bit for me would be, it will be interesting to see over the course of probably the next year how government, if we to hit that, try to incentivize more builders to be building to this ahead of the actual deadline.
Yeah, and just on that then, have you seen an impact when it comes to material costs? Obviously, given the challenges we're facing with inflation right now, has that had an impact on the work you're doing?
Yeah, across the patch. That's not a Project 80 or sort of low carbon impact, or isn't specific to the homes I discussed earlier. Like anybody who's trying to do, be it a relatively small extension or build 5 or 6 new homes in an area, or whatever it will be. Obviously, we're planning to build around 750 homes this year. So we've got quite a lot of development going on at the moment, and across the patch, yeah, it is those sort of costs. The rising cost is something everybody's seeing.
Yeah, no, very much so. Dane, we've got a question from Tina Swaney. I think you've obviously touched on this in your last answer, but is the technology for electric charging points likely to change so rapidly that recently installed ones might be out of date within a short space of time?
I think the short answer has to be no. No, they won't be out of date. No, they'll still do the job. The government as well, as you're seeing more and more sort of parking bay charging on the high street. There's a number of charging points that have been installed around the country in your local towns, service stations, and I'm sure schools are going to start to implement a way to generate revenue and make the use of their empty space that they've got in car parks and so on to have these charging points. And ground surveys are done before any charging points are installed, whether that be at home or on a commercial site. A lot of work goes into making sure that the infrastructure, the groundworks, all of those things are laid correctly. So this is not a short-term investment. Nobody's thinking we're going to lay these in and we'll tear those up in 6 months. That's not the case. These are future-proof. They're going to be effective and efficient. But as I did say, the caveat to that is always that things can always be improved. But I don't foresee them being outdated in a short space of time. No, I don't, Tina.
Okay. No, thanks for that. And we've had a question from Nicholas Worthington, who's saying it's great to see the work being done to make a difference to our society and community and environment. Question is this: to what extent are these initiatives integrated with the external infrastructure? So, for example, cycling routes, charging points for cars, sustainable transport buses, for example, healthy outdoor communal spaces. So I guess this obviously touches upon that element of collaboration with organisations such as the West Midlands Combined Authority or the likes of Birmingham City Council. So I don't know if anyone wanted to come in on that point first and foremost.
I suppose from our point of view, at new sites, which is primarily where we'll be building, obviously there's full sort of transport assessments, infrastructure assessments sort of done. I do think it is a interesting point that actually I don't know, but I would imagine the sustainability of the transport rather than the availability of the transport is a lessened priority. So can we get this number of people here? And frankly, if you live in an area that you love and some land down the road gets sold for new homes, you would be more interested in the fact that people are going to be able to get there in a way that doesn't cause congestion outside your house, rather than they'd be able to get there, I suppose, via bike, or that there'd be, EV charging points, which is understandable. But I would imagine it is something that will come into the planning more, but actually maybe something we can take away and say that when we're investing this extra sort of amount of money building at least the new homes for Project 80, it could be something we could push councils on to make sure that actually we're not just building environmentally sound homes, that there is environmentally sound infrastructure around it. That could be something we could take away. I'll be honest, it isn't something I think we've done on the first 2 sites, but we could take it to the third for sure.
And the good thing is, obviously, you've got that buy-in from, like you said, the likes of the mayor, dealer as well. Yeah, and obviously that collaboration with the city council. So I think that all ties in quite nicely. I'm conscious of time, so I thought we'd just wrap up with one final point from each of you. But really, from question to wrap up, really is what's the takeaway for businesses who are on this call today, who are keen to cultivate and develop these types of products? What would you say, if you had to say kind of one takeaway each? If I start with you, Maria, and then we'll come on to Jack and then Dane. Oh, I think you're still on mute, sorry.
Takeaway for businesses, that there is plenty of information out there, support and funding opportunities. And also, yeah, it's just as I said before, a matter of taking action, like joining this kind of webinars is something that you should just consider doing quite often, just to get updated of what other people are doing or offering. So yeah, just keep it moving and don't stay quiet. Try to, yeah, take action.
No, thank you for that. Dane, can I bring you in?
Yeah, I think I've got to echo what Maria said, was that do something, you know, do something, you know. Indecision within itself is a decision, isn't it? You're choosing to kind of not do anything yet and just think about it a bit more. There are all small steps that we can all be taking. You know, it doesn't need to be a complete overhaul of your company or your business or even your house, but there are small steps we can take. There's advice from people like Maria and companies like that who can give us that help. So, you know, the internet is obviously another source of information, the way that we can cultivate that. So there's really no excuse for us to be taking at least baby steps towards a greener future and sustainability.
Yeah, thank you, Dane. And finally, Jack, if I can bring you in.
Yeah, very similar, I suppose. I think ours was slightly different because we sort of didn't take a baby step on it in a way. We just sort of went relatively all in. But I think, you know, obviously think it through. Make sure you're committed, but you know, I think once you are, just absolutely go for it. I think that's the bit for us. This has blossomed into a new low carbon strategy for us, really. So once we got into this and started understanding the technologies more, we've committed to bringing all of our offices to a better EPC standard. We're committed to getting all of our existing homes, and bear in mind I said, you know, several thousands of those are pre-war terraced homes in inner city Birmingham to an EPCC by 2025, and then B by 2030. I think I'll have to double check those. But effectively, we've committed to improving our existing stock, looking at the ways we can work. You know, colleagues have been enthused by it, and are now saying we should be a paperless office by 2024. So it's actually, for us, it's sort of snowballed and has led to a bit more sort of, well, frankly, lots more enthusiasm internally for it. So I just think, yeah, go for it.
Brilliant. Well, that's been fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Really informative and insightful discussion that we've had there. So before we wrap up, I'm conscious it's close to 10 o'clock. Just a few points to highlight. In terms of upcoming events as part of our Sustainable Business Series, we have an in-person event next week at Tyseley Energy Park, which looks at decarbonisation in key sectors. That's taking place on the 19th of October. We'll share details of that after this event. And then we've also got another webinar the week after, which looks at climate risk and adaptation, which is taking place on the 27th of October. And finally, the series will culminate with an in-person conference on the 2nd of November at the Exchange Building in the centre of Birmingham. Andy Street, West Midlands Mayor's keynote speaker. Thanks to our sponsors, Aston University, University of Birmingham and Shakespeare Martineau. All of these events are free to attend, so please do come along if you are available. And one last thing to ask as well is that we do send around a post-event survey, and my colleague Curran will put the link in the chat. Essentially, this survey is used by us to inform our sustainability activities moving forward, and in particular, what we'd like to see in next year's Sustainable Business Series as well. So really, the feedback we get helps with our lobbying activity and also shaping the events we put on moving forward. So if you could please fill that in, that'd be really appreciated. But all that's left for me to say is thank you so much to Jack, Maria, Dane and Chris, and obviously thank you to all of yourselves for joining us today. Have a great day. Many thanks.
Thanks, Raj. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you so much.